The pawn shop didn't feel like a shop that morning. It felt like a confession booth with neon lights. Ray was halfway through unlocking the front display when his sister, Lila, stopped mid-step and stared through the glass like she'd seen a ghost park at the curb. A small hatchback sat outside with its trunk open, and two elderly people stood beside it arguing in whispers, hands shaking, shoulders tense, like they were about to do something they'd regret. Then they came in. They didn't bring a guitar or a ring. They brought two thick plastic storage bins, heavy-duty ones with gasket lids. The kind you buy when what's inside is supposed to survive floods, fire, and time. Both were spotless. No dust, no scratches, no faded sharp labels. Just clean, matching containers set down on Ray's counter with the careful reverence of something that could break a life in either direction. The husband spoke first, voice thin with pride and fear. "Please don't say our names," he blurted before anyone had asked. We're not those people. We don't do this." His wife stood close enough to touch his elbow, like she was anchoring him. She looked late 60s, tired eyes. The kind of tired you get from years of being careful. "We only brought two," she said, quick and quiet. "The others are still locked up. We just need to know what we're dealing with." Ray didn't smile. Lila didn't reach for the latches. In their shop, the fastest way to get burned was to act excited. "Start from the beginning," Ray said, steady. "Why are you shaking?" The story came out like a couple reading from the same bad memory. A few years ago, they trusted someone who promised a safe retirement opportunity. It collapsed. The numbers stopped working. The savings they'd built for decades turned into a lesson they never asked for. Since then, life had shrunk into bills and medicine and grocery math. The husband took part-time shifts at a home supply store, lifting and stocking, watching wealthy customers buy stacks of these exact sealed containers in bulk, like they were building a private archive. Then he heard about a storage auction in that same wealthy area. One listing showed tired furniture in boxes, but in the back, 6 matching bins stacked neatly, like someone cared about the order. They set a hard spending limit. They swore they'd walk away. They didn't. "We won it," the wife admitted, as if saying it louder would make it more reckless. "And we didn't celebrate. We went home sick to our stomachs." The next morning they returned with gloves and a notebook and lifted the first lid. Inside wasn't junk. It was wrapped bundles tied with twine, clean coats, expensive scarves, dresses on proper hangers, and a velvet pouch with jewelry that made her husband sit down on the concrete because his legs suddenly didn't trust him. Another bin held framed art stacked like someone knew how corners crack. A third had folders, receipts, labels, old clippings, like a life had been cataloged and then abandoned. And then, the husband said, swallowing hard, "We noticed the lock plate on the unit. Fresh scratches, like somebody tested it after the auction." Lila finally put on gloves. She looked at Ray, then at the 2 sealed bins on the counter. "Open one," she said softly, "and we decide what kind of story this is." Ray flipped the latch. The lid released with a slow, airtight sigh, like the bin had been holding its breath. The first bin opened with a slow, sealed sigh, like it had been holding air for years. Inside wasn't junk, and it wasn't random. It was arranged, bundles tied with twine, layers separated by cardboard, corners protected like someone feared even a scratch. Lila unfolded one bundle and revealed a heavy coat with a silk lining, then scarves folded into perfect rectangles, then dresses still on wooden hangers, sleeved in tissue like they were waiting for a closet that never came. At the bottom sat a velvet pouch. Ray didn't open it immediately. He waited in his palm first, and that wait told him more than glitter ever could. When Lila finally loosened the drawstring, the contents didn't scream movie treasure. They whispered real life. A thin gold chain rubbed smooth from years of wear, 2 rings with stones set low for everyday hands, and a bird-shaped brooch that caught the light in sharp, icy flashes. The retired couple didn't smile. They went quiet, because value like that doesn't feel lucky. It feels like stepping into somebody else's private room. The second bin hit harder, not because it was flashier, but because it had a pulse. Framed pieces stacked with cardboard between them, wrapped like something meant to survive shipping, not storage. Lila slid one portrait free and peeled back the paper, and the face beneath looked painted with the kind of patience money can buy. Old oil, fine cracks in the surface, eyes that seemed to watch you back. Under the frames was a manila folder with typed labels, numbers, descriptions, receipts, and a yellowed newspaper clipping about a local collector who died years ago. The kind of man who had a private collection nobody ever fully saw. Ray read the clipping twice, then looked at the couple like he finally understood why their hands wouldn't stop shaking. "This isn't curb junk," he said quietly. "This is a life that got boxed up and then lost." Then the wife noticed something taped flat to the underside of the lid. A sealed envelope, placed dead center like a final instruction. No name, no address, just a neat line of handwriting. "Keep private. Handle properly." Lila didn't open it. She set it on the counter like a loaded object. The husband swallowed. "That's what scares me," he admitted. "Not the money. The way it's all planned." Right on cue, the front bell chimed and a man stepped in who didn't even pretend to browse. Mid-50s, clean jacket, eyes too quick. He looked past the displays and locked onto the bins like he'd been told what to look for. His smile was gentle in the way a trap is gentle. "I buy estates," he said, voice smooth. "I can make this easy. Cash today." The couple's faces tightened because cash today sounds like relief when you're retired and tired. Ray leaned forward, calm as closing a door. "Easy is expensive," he said, "and you're not touching anything in here without my sister saying so." The man's smile stayed on his face, but it went flatter at the edges. He backed up slowly, like he didn't want to show frustration, and through the front window, a car rolled past so slow it felt like counting. 1, 2, 3, before disappearing at the corner. Lila kept her voice low, eyes on the envelope. "Whatever this is," she murmured, "it's not just valuable. It's wanted." Ray didn't chase the man who offered cash today. He didn't need to. In a pawn shop, the fastest way to lose control is to follow someone else's urgency out the door. Instead, he did something quieter and sharper. He turned the envelope over without opening it and held it up under the light to see if anything bled through the paper. Just one faint shape, an embossed seal, the kind you don't use for junk. Lila watched the couple's faces and made a decision on their behalf. The way you do when people are too scared to choose wisely. "We're not ripping that open like it's a birthday card," she said. "If it's meant to be handled properly, then we handle it properly." So they treated it like a key, not a prize. They opened it together, slow, and what fell out wasn't a confession or a dramatic threat. It was a plain, typed page with a list of 6 container numbers and a short instruction. The collection was to be consolidated for an estate sale, and any finder was entitled to a reward if the set remained intact. No police language, no panic words, just an old-fashioned promise written by someone who'd expected the world to get messy and tried to plan around it. At the bottom was a phone number and a name, an executor's office, plus one line that made the retired wife's shoulders finally drop. "If you are holding these items in good faith, we will make it right." The call that followed wasn't a standoff. It was a release. A woman answered, tired but professional, and when Ray read the envelope's code phrase, her voice changed like a door unlocking. She explained in simple terms what the couple already felt in their bones. The owner had died. A subcontractor had botched the cleanout. The unit went delinquent, and the bins, meant to be protected, ended up sold like ordinary clutter. They didn't accuse anyone. They didn't demand. They offered a path that felt almost unreal to 2 people who'd been counting grocery items for years. Return the collection intact and receive a finder's fee that honored the value and the honesty. The man who'd come and offering cash today suddenly made sense. He wasn't a savior. He was a shortcut looking for a victim. The handoff happened in daylight, clean and quiet. The couple didn't haul all 6 bins into the shop. They brought them in 2 trips, and Ray and Lila insisted on doing it the same way they handled everything that could change a life. Calm voices, locked doors for an hour, no crowds, no spectacle. An executor's rep arrived with an appraiser, verified the distinctive pieces, the bird brooch, the portraits, the initials on the locket, and checked the matching paperwork from the folder. Every match softened the tension in the couple's faces until the husband looked like he might actually sit down and breathe for the first time in years. Then the rep slid an envelope across the counter. Not a promise, not "we'll send it later," but a cashier's check. The amount wasn't shouted. It didn't need to be. The wife's hands went to her mouth, and the husband's eyes watered in a way he tried to hide by staring at the floor. A week later, they came back to the pawn shop, not carrying bins, just carrying a different kind of posture. They'd paid off the debt that haunted them. They'd scheduled the medical appointments they kept postponing. They'd replaced the car that coughed every winter morning. And they'd moved into a small place that didn't leak when it rained. Nothing fancy, just safe. They brought Ray and Lila a cheap bakery box of cookies and a card with a handwritten line inside. "You didn't just help us sell things. You helped us stop being afraid." Lila read it twice and folded it carefully like it mattered. Ray didn't hang the card on the wall. He tucked it into the drawer beneath the register where the shop kept the stories it didn't advertise. Outside, the street kept moving. Inside, the pawn shop stayed what it always was at its best. Two steady owners behind a counter, turning panic into a plan and sending people home lighter than they arrived. And for that retired couple, the bins weren't just a big find anymore. They were the day their life finally stopped shrinking.